Chapter 26. Imogen had never had so much fun in her life. Despite the slow pace, a necessity with a group of primarily beginners, she was loving every minute of the trip. Bailey had everything organized to perfection. A simple but tasty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits was held under a 24 by 24 structure with benches and picnic tables. Coffee made over an open fire was no rook roasters, but had a lot of personality and jolted her awake. Once breakfast was over, everyone headed straight for the paddocks where the horses were already tacked up and tied to the posts, thanks to Bailey, Gabe, and Imogen's morning chores. She was tired, but waking up to the chill in the air, feeding and grooming the horses, and eating outside, well, that was a highlight of the trip Imogen never thought she'd love. At home, she was a late-to-bed, late-to-rise, and slow-to-wake up sort of woman. There was just something about the fresh air that was invigorating. If she had to admit it to herself, Fortune was a big part of how much fun she was having. He was big. She considered herself a pretty athletic person, but she was embarrassed to need a leg up on him from Gabe, who was conveniently nearby to assist when it proved that little mounting block wasn't tall enough. He helped her up and over, and once he checked her girth, something she rolled her eyes at. After all, she did it for half the guests herself. He mounted up Rowdy and waited next to her for Bailey to lead the group. Imogen's job was to take the rear and make sure the guests in the back stayed on course and with the group. Bailey put Gabe in charge of riding up and down the line to check in with each rider individually and monitor how everyone was doing. The first day trail was the easiest, with limited changes in terrain and easy grades, no big changes in uphill or downhill. Each day, the trail would change, and they would go in a different direction from base camp. Overall, there were 3 half-day rides for this last trek of the year. Imogen was elated to spend so much time in the saddle, even if they had to keep a slower pace. So far, Fortune was proving to be more of a trail horse than she anticipated. When Laura had suggested he have a little vacation from the arena while Bianca was recovering from the fall, Imogen was hesitant. She wasn't scared of him, rather she was a little anxious that Bianca would be okay with the idea. But to her surprise, it had been Bianca's idea. It might have something to do with the concussion, a thought Laura dismissed, but Imogen wanted to spend more time with Fortune, and riding him, well, it was a dream. He was incredibly smooth and balanced. In the few arena rides Laura insisted on, he had been tense and looky, coiled tension ready to explode. Imogen found herself trying to keep his focus on her, and that seemed to work, although her trainer refused to let her do anything more than walk or trot for safety. After all, they were only going on a slow-paced ride. In direct opposition of the ring, he was cool and collected on the trail. He seemed happy enough to follow behind, relaxing into the pace and just going with the flow. As a result, Imogen was able to relax even more, focusing less on the horse underneath her and focusing more on the group in front. They were great. It was 2 families who vacationed every year together and wanted to do something special for their kids during fall break. While all their friends were going to the Caribbean or to Disney World, they instead opted to camp or go on an adventure. They chose by picking out of a hat, and a horse glamping trip was the winner. Some looked more thrilled at the prospect than others, but they were good sports nonetheless. Gabe started in the back and then slowly worked his way up the line, checking in with each rider. For someone who tended to speak little and enjoy silence, he made small talk easily, making the moms titter and the dads slap their legs at something he said. He was surprisingly good with the kids also. He was charming, Imogen thought. He had such a steady way about him, making people feel comfortable and relaxed. It was a gift, and she couldn't help but admire it. In the few short weeks since she'd been in Vermont, he'd become someone she could always rely on. Usually, she was that person for others, so it was a relief to have him as a friend. And if she got butterflies in her stomach when he looked at her, well, that was her problem. She wouldn't start something with him and then walk away. It wouldn't be fair to him. Lost in her thoughts, she didn't realize they had made a large loop and were heading back into camp. Fortune had just followed the horse in front. She reached down and gave him a scratch on his neck, his ear flicking to her in response. "First run as a guide, Imogen. How do you feel?" Bailey checked in with her, bumping her shoulder in a friendly way as she sat next to her by the campfire that evening. The guests were enjoying s'mores after their dinner, and Bailey had snagged 2 for them. Imogen sighed in pleasure. "Bailey, you are a queen." She took a big bite of the gooey goodness, not caring that chocolate smeared her cheeks or hands. Was there anything better than chocolate? Today was a lot of fun. It's organized chaos. The food and the horses are all streamlined, but the people throw a wrench into it, don't they? Bailey laughed. Absolutely. They are the only thing we can't anticipate. We plan for everything and handle it as it comes. There is always one person in the group who causes drama or is unhappy with something. Imogen smiled. It's like that everywhere, I guess. You're really good with people, Bailey, and your horses are amazing. Stop, Imogen. Bailey blushed, uncomfortable with the compliments. She'd put a lot of hard work into her business, but the horses were her heart, so a compliment on them was the greatest gift. You know, you are great with people too. You have a fun, positive energy, and people are drawn to that. Both Penelope and her friend Diane came over separately to tell me how much they loved spending time with you today after the ride, and how patient you were with the kids when they were asking to groom the horses. Oh my goodness, those kids were so cute. I wish I came on trips like this as a kid. I did, Bailey responded. Well, not exactly like this, but we used to road trip and go to dude ranches out west, and take international horse trips to places like France and Iceland. Wow, you must come from a pretty horsey background. I did. My mom and dad actually met while working summers at a cattle ranch in Wyoming. You would think they would have been bored of horses, but when they got married, they both chose to work office jobs for the stability. So our vacations were a way for them to reconnect and let us experience something important to them. Imogen reached out a hand to her friend, placing it on her knee. That's amazing, Bailey. And to create something like this and offer new experiences and memories for other families, your parents must be so proud. A dark look crossed Bailey's face before it cleared. I hope my parents are proud, but I'll never know, because they died in a car accident about 3 years ago. They never got to see it. Imogen felt terrible. She had no idea. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't help with your grief, but that makes what you are doing so much more special. It's a way of keeping their memories alive. I never thought of it like that, but you're right. Creating this has also been a way of keeping them alive in my heart and holding them close, but it's become bigger than I can handle on my own. Imogen couldn't help but agree. She was exhausted, and she'd only been working here 1 day. She had no idea how much work went into the daily care, marketing, organizing schedules, groups, and payments, and Bailey had been doing it all herself. It was mind-boggling, and she said so. Bailey laughed. I've loved it, but I can't maintain it as is, just myself, which is why I wanted to speak with you. Imogen was confused. With me? What about? Well, I was wondering if you'd be willing to come work for me. I need someone to help me with this place, horse chores, tacking and grooming, and handling the trail rides so I can focus on the guests and the management. Bailey looked expectantly at Imogen, holding her breath. Wow, Imogen was floored. She didn't expect a job offer. 1 weekend was a favor, but she wasn't planning on staying long in Vermont. She had an entire life in New Jersey, friends, family. Bailey, I'm shocked. I'm honored, but I am leaving after the winter. Bailey stopped her. Listen, I know you came to Vermont to help Joe, and you didn't plan to stay, but think about it. You fit here, Imogen. Don't make any decisions right now. This is the last trek of the season, and then I don't have guests until May. That's like 6 months off. Imogen knew the winter would make it hard for horse riding vacations, but that was a long time to not bring in business. Yes, we only offer rides May through November. Obviously, the horses require me to work year-round, but during the colder months, I stay in town with Harper or travel if I can snag a farm sitter. That sounded like heaven to Imogen. Imagine a life where she could work hard for 6 months, but have the flexibility to travel and not do the same thing every day. Still, she couldn't stay in Vermont. It wouldn't be fair to make a promise she couldn't keep. But she'd honor Bailey's request and wait a few days before telling her, thanks, but no thanks. I am so grateful you want me to work with you. I'll wait a few days, but Bailey, I just don't think. I don't want an answer now. Have another s'more and I'll talk to you again after the weekend. Bailey got up, dusted her hands of graham cracker crust, and walked off to talk to a few of her guests, ever the charming hostess. Imogen sat by the fire, taking in the atmosphere, her brain now busy.